Before we get too far away from Independence Day, that's a few more things that I wanted to share with you after last week's message. We're going to read as our text today from Romans chapter 12, verses 3 through 9, and the title of the message today is Christian Citizenship. I don't always do a 4th of July sermon. This year I'm doing 2 of them. Whenever the Lord puts something on my heart that I think He wants me to say, I try to bring that to you. So let's read Paul's words here. Romans chapter 12. This is the beginning in chapter 12 of that great practical section of the book of Romans. How a person who is in Christ should live in the world. And this is what Paul says beginning in verse 3. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you. Just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportion to his faith. If it is serving, let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it is encouraging, let him encourage. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it is leadership, let him govern diligently. If it is showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. There is a sense among many people that America is going downhill. Some saying even that we've passed the point of no return. I don't know if that's true or not. That's in the sovereignty of God. That's way above my ability to know. But what I do know is this, that the Word of God tells us as Christians how to behave in the world. That's something we do have control over. Now, obviously, what Paul wrote here, he's not thinking about America. He's really talking more about how to behave within a church family. But many of his comments here do apply to Christian citizenship. And I want to share some of those thoughts with you this morning. The first one is in verse 3, and it has to do with how we look at ourselves. He says, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. One of the things that, in my opinion, is wrong with America is that there is a sense of entitlement among many Americans that is to the detriment of our country. Somebody said that old adage of give a man a fish and he'll eat today, teach him how to fish, and he'll eat for the rest of his life. He said that needs to be updated. Give a man a fish and he will ask for tartar sauce and french fries. And moreover, some politician who wants his vote will declare that all these things are among his basic rights. Well, I think there's some truth to that. It's funny, but I think there's some truth to that. I think we, as a nation, we have moved away from the thought of doing things primarily for the welfare of others. It just is a very basic example of what I'm talking about. When I was coming up, I think a lot of people they kept their homes together for the good of the children. You would hear that a lot. The couples who maybe weren't entirely happy with one another, they still stayed together and they kept the family together for the good of the children. You don't see that a whole lot anymore. People have much more of a selfish attitude about life and do pretty much whatever makes me happy, that's what I'm going to do, and I don't care who it hurts. And I wonder how a country that really, literally saved the world in World War II and did it sacrificially and at great cost to our own nation, how we got to the point where we become so self-centered, such a selfish people. Somebody said that we're nation of toddlers. And he said, these are the laws that toddlers live by. If I like it, it's mine. If it's in my hand, it's mine. If I can take it from you, it's mine. If I had it a little while ago, it's mine. If I'm doing or building something, all the pieces are mine. If it looks just like mine, it's mine. If I think it's mine, it's mine. If it's yours and I steal it, it's mine. And he said, that sounds like modern American. I think there is some truth in that. This self-centeredness is part of our national identity. And I don't know where it's coming from. Part of the problem may be in our schools. I'm not qualified to pass judgment on what's going on in our schools. I do know that what I do know worries me. And I may not know a lot. You know, Thomas Sowell said that it takes a great deal of knowledge just to know the extent of your own ignorance. Well, I don't know everything about our schools, but I do remember some years ago when we were living in Louisiana, I was invited by one of the local junior highs to come talk to a class of 8th graders who were studying the Bill of Rights. You know, those 10 add-ons to the Constitution of the United States to ensure the limits of government upon the freedom of the people. And this class had been studying the Bill of Rights for some time. So when I went to talk to them, the first thing I asked them was, in one sentence, try to tell me what the Bill of Rights is. And pretty much in unison, the answer of the class was, the Bill of Rights means I can do whatever I feel like doing. And I thought, that's a pretty sad understanding of what freedom means in America. So part of the problem may be in our schools. I know for a fact that a big part of the problem is in our homes. We are raising children who think they're the center of the universe. And a good lesson for all of us to learn is that we are not the center of the universe. God is the center of the universe. And everybody needs to hear that. Everybody needs to know that life is better when we focus more on God, more on others than we do on ourselves. C.S. Lewis had a great quote about humility. In fact, it's the best quote on humility I've ever heard. C.S. Lewis said that humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Do you get the difference there? Boy, that's 100% right. And think what a difference it would make in our country if we followed Paul's advice here in verse 3 to stop focusing so much on ourselves and start focusing on the greater good. And then in verses 4 and 5, Paul reminds us that we are interconnected. He said we are many members. We are members with one another, one body with many functions. The great vision of America is e pluribus unum, from many one. Somebody said our national motto should be changed from e pluribus unum to what's in it for me. The great vision of America is that no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, if you come to America and consider yourself an American, you are an American. I don't know any place else in the world where that is the case. And it pains me to see America today so divided by politics, by race, by gender, by religion. I agree with the man who said there's only one race, and that's the human race. I wish more people felt that way. The things that divide us today, this principle that Paul lays down here should govern our thoughts that we are members with one another. We are interconnected as Americans. And that's why today, to me, it doesn't, if you're a conservative or a liberal, you're still my fellow American. If you're rich or poor, we're in this together. Protestant, Catholic, Jew, Muslim, atheist. We should all equally love America and want to see it prosper. We are in this together. And that's how a society functions when we all pitch in to do our part. One of the things that Mary and I taught our children, and it's one of the most important things we taught them, is the value of hard work. We taught our children that a family doesn't function unless everybody pitches in to do their part. Every everybody has a responsibility. And you know, let me say, this isn't gospel anymore, this is just me talking. But I didn't even like giving the kids an allowance for doing their household chores. One time one of the kids asked me how much I was going to pay them to do their stuff like washing the dishes and cleaning up their rooms, and I said, how much are you going to pay me for doing what I do around the house? How much are you going to pay Mom for what she does? And that put an end to that. But more than that, it taught them that we all pitch in, we all do something sacrificially, and the end result is that the family functions. Now, what we were teaching them about, of course, is not just how families function, but how societies function. And it's no surprise that all three of them now are very hard-working adults. They learned that in the home. We have too many people in America who only take and never give. It's not wrong to take in America. It's wrong when all you do is take. Americans live by, or at least ideally, we live by what is called a social contract. It's the idea that all of us are obligated to behave in ways that benefit society at large. When the original Pilgrims were coming over on the Mayflower in 1620, you know, there weren't just Pilgrims on that boat. The Pilgrims, that ship, the Pilgrims were only about half of the passengers. But they were all going to the same place, and when the Pilgrims realized that those other people on the ship had no intention whatsoever of living according to the laws that the Pilgrims intended to set up, they got together and they made a deal. It was called the Mayflower Compact. They made a deal, and the deal was every one of us agrees to live in accordance to the laws that we are going to establish. And the head of every family had to sign a document indicating that they would do that. And that Mayflower Compact lasted for 71 years until 1691, when that colony was absorbed into the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So they were governed by that. Now that principle is still at work in America. We are obligated to be responsible. Today we have a whole subculture who benefit from society but exempt themselves from any responsibilities toward society. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Thomas Sowell. Great African-American writer. He is, in my opinion, one of the great American intellectuals of the 20th century. He's still alive, he's still writing, he's in his 70s. He was for many years professor of economics at Stanford University, part of the Hoover Institute. They're a think tank. This man is one of the great thinkers of modern America. He said something recently, and I wrote it down because it just floored me. It is so true. Listen to what he said. He said, you cannot take any people of any color and exempt them from the requirements of civilization, including work, behavioral standards, personal responsibility, and all the other basic things that the clever intelligentsia disdains, without ruinous consequences to themselves and to society at large. You get what he's saying? He's saying that when we just take and never give, it's bad for us, it's bad for society. Our nation was founded upon certain ideals. Now, Dennis Prager wrote a great article on this. The American ideals that are found on a quarter, for example. Liberty, e pluribus unum, in God we trust. And he has great comments on that if you can ever come across that article. Let me give you some American ideals that go back even further back in our history, beyond just what's on the money. These are American ideals that are found in the Declaration of Independence, in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. And the reason I want to make these points to you is I think most Americans don't realize anymore what American ideals are. Last year I was on an internet message board, it's called, kind of an internet forum where people can talk back and forth to each other. Now this particular one has to do with politics. There are 121,000 people who belong to this board. I asked a question: what are some American ideals? I had 200 people respond. 198 of them said there's no such thing. The two people who responded, one of them said hard work is an American ideal, and I agree with that. The other one said individualism is an American ideal, and I agree with that. The ones I disagree with are the 198 who said there's no such thing as American ideals. Well, there are. Let me give you a few that go back to the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. One American ideal is life. This is found in the Declaration of Independence. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Americans believe that every individual's life is precious. And at least originally we believed that because we know that every life is a gift from God. There is no citizen in the United States whose life is worth less than that of every other citizen. And life should only be taken because it is a gift from God under the most extreme circumstances, such as the use of deadly force to protect oneself or to protect others, and so on. A second American ideal is liberty. This includes personal freedom, it includes political freedom, it includes economic freedom. Now you may hear that and go, well, yeah, of course, that's... But you know what? Those are radical, revolutionary ideas, not just in the world 239 years ago when that was written. They're still revolutionary ideas. Do you know right now in America, if you've got enough money in your pocket or in your bank account, you can go buy a piece of property and own it, and it's your property? Do you realize in most of the world today, you still can't do that? Citizens of those countries don't have the right to own private property, but you do here in America, and you have the right to do it without unreasonable government interference. Another idea, the pursuit of happiness. That seems a little strange to us today, the language, but it was the idea that every American citizen has the right to pursue or to attain happiness as they define it. What happiness means to you, as long as you don't infringe upon the rights of others in doing it. And so that neighbor who keeps you up at 3 o'clock in the morning because happiness to him is playing his boombox in his backyard, he's not free to do that because he's infringing upon your right to get a good night's sleep. So the pursuit of happiness, guaranteed in our documents. Another American ideal is that we all work for the common good. This was, when you read early American writings, this was an extremely important idea to our founding fathers, and it is almost absent in modern American thought. But what it means is this, that all citizens have an obligation, are required to behave in ways that promote the welfare of the community at large and not just for themselves. To work together, and this goes back to Paul's idea, to work together in a way that benefits everyone. Another American ideal is justice. People should be treated fairly in both the benefits and the burdens of society. Now, this is one of the places where America has jumped the track, because we almost always use the notion of justice today to talk only about the benefits of society. Now that's important, it's half of the equation, I'm not saying it's not. If you go back and read the early writings on justice, the idea was that we are to be treated fairly in what we receive from society and what we give to society. No one should have to give too much, no one should be allowed to give too little. In a truly just society, there must be people who are both givers and takers. Another American ideal is equality. This was slow in coming in America, but we finally got there. And today all citizens have equality before the law and cannot be denied their rights unless by a due process of law, are treated as political equals, legal equals, and even social equals. And again, this is a revolutionary idea. We don't have royalty here in America. We're all common citizens before the law. And then finally, the rule of law, that both The government and the governed are subject to the same laws. Now, all of these American ideals, and that's not a complete list, it's just some, they all require both responsibility and liberty. And then the last thing Paul points out that I want to call your attention to is in verse 9. He tells us to hate evil and love what is good. You're aware, I know, that there is an ongoing culture war being fought in America. It is an attempt to redefine the family, to ignore the rights of the unborn, to do away with the traditional understanding of right and wrong, to delegitimize religion, and to fundamentally transform America. And it's a battle, a war that is being fought in our courts, it's being fought in the political arena, it's being fought in the newspapers, in the TV shows that you watch, the movies that you watch, it's being fought in our schools, and yes, it's even being fought in our churches. And the result of this lengthy culture war is that I have a feeling that a good half, at least, of America today has no clue anymore about what is right and what is wrong. And look at what it's done to us. How are our families doing today? Divorce rates are high. People who willingly enter into parenthood without marriage is the norm. The role of fathers has been diminished. Daycare centers are now raising the next generation of children. How are businesses doing? We've seen in recent years the near collapse of our national economy. How's the government doing? We still have far too much corruption, far too much party politics, too much greed, too much scandals. How about our schools? Once among the best in the world, they now rank among the worst in industrial nations on certain standards. This culture war, Christians, we're losing right now. But you and I can make a difference. We can't change everything by ourselves, but we can change some things. And that's what I want to challenge you to do today. As a Christian in this community, to use your influence to change what you can change. Last year I was in Walmart. I was buying some groceries, and I just had a few items. So I was in the checkout aisle for 20 items or less. The lady in front of me had a cart that was full. I mean overflowing. She must have had, I don't know, 70, 80 items in there. And I'm standing in the back of her just like, you know, looking in disbelief, thinking eventually she's going to realize what line she's in. But she never did. And she starts putting her stuff, you know, on the checkout thing. And the cashier was so sweet and polite. She didn't say anything. She checked all of her groceries. And then once she had finished, she said to the woman very politely, "Madam, just for next time, so you'll know, this is for 20 items or less. So next time you need to go to one of the other registers." Very polite. And the woman, you could see the smoke coming out of her ears. And I knew what was coming. And sure enough, after she paid, she pushed her cart over there to where the manager was. So I hurried up and got through and pushed my cart right behind her. And I went and stood over there, and she gave that manager an earful about how rude that cashier was. And I even wrote this down. She said, "That cashier made me feel bad about my mistake." So when she had finished, and the manager said, "Well, you know, thank you for letting me know, and I'll check into this and I'll take care of it." As soon as she was finished, while she was still standing there, I said to the manager, "Everything this woman just said to you is not true." I was right behind her. That cashier didn't say a word. She checked all of her stuff out, and then once she finished, then she said to her, "Ma'am, just so you'll know for next time, this is 20 items or less. Next time with this many items, you need to go to another register." And the woman blew up. She turned around and shouted at me, "You mind your own business." You know what I said to her? I said, man, this is my business. Now, that's just one little thing. But that's how change happens. One little thing at a time. You can't change everything, and neither can I, but we can change some things. And what I want you to do, what I want you to remember, first of all, today, is that what happens in America, what happens in your community, it is your business, because you're an American citizen. And as a Christian, what happens here is your business. Edmund Burke said, all that is necessary for evil to flourish is for good men to do nothing. And I want to challenge you to stop doing nothing and to start doing something, even if it just seems like a little thing. You take a stand for what you know to be right. You take a stand against what you know to be wrong. Because in the end, folks, America is what we allow it to become. I don't know how much we can do, but I intend to find out. And I invite you to do that with me. This morning we're going to sing very appropriately as our song of invitation, hymn number 571, Let Others See Jesus in You.